The goal by the end of this session is to get familiar with the publication cycle process and also learn about the available resources and services to help with publications. As healthcare practitioners, learners, academics, or researchers, the pressure to publish is often there, whether it is for quality improvement or for promotion or maintaining tenure. And it's not easy to publish, especially for researchers or practitioners who are novice in academia. So how do we start? How can we publish an article in a high-quality, peer-reviewed, and legitimate journal? What are the barriers and challenges in publishing, and how can we overcome them? First of all, why do we need to publish? Well, first of all, we can do this to improve quality of care, outline gaps in medical research, introduce new paradigms, motivate more research, progress within the scientific community, or for academic promotions. Some of the common barriers are lack of research, training, and mentoring, lack of funding, limited competency and skills, research methods, statistical analysis, knowledge, scientific communication, and scholarly writing ability. To help to overcome some of these barriers, staff at the UHN Libraries have put the Publication Cycle web guide together, and in this session, we will review the steps that are involved in the publication cycle. For some of the steps, we will go more in depth, and some of them will just be an overview. What is the publication cycle? The publication cycle consists of 4 steps. Before you start your research, research building blocks, writing your manuscript, and after you publish. I'm just going to go to the web and show you where you can find the publication cycle on the UHN Virtual Library. You go to the virtual library by typing in UHNLibraries.ca, and the publication cycle is across the top. You can click on an overview slide in order to get the different links to the different sections. And you can also go directly to each of the 4 steps. Some of the elements you need to consider before you start your research are developing a research question, types of literature reviews, writing protocols, choosing a journal, and avoiding research waste. There are some tools that can help you to identify if your research question is feasible and answerable, such as FINER. Feasible. Size. For research involving humans, how many subjects would you need to include to answer your question well? Are you going to be able to both recruit and manage this number? For knowledge synthesis research, roughly how many citations is an appropriate search likely to yield for your question? Talk to an information specialist about how to determine an estimate. Can you and your team handle this number of citations for duplication, screening, data extraction, and an appropriate synthesis method to answer your question? Do you have the expertise needed on your team? Subject specialists, search specialist, statistician, someone with expertise with any software, hardware, or equipment you need to use? Do you have time to complete your research while adhering to best practices? Think of both deadlines and the hours required each week for each team member. Do you have access to appropriate space, storage, hardware, software, and other necessary equipment? Do you have a sufficient number of team members to meet methodological requirements and complete your research in a timely manner? Do you have sufficient funding to pay for all of this or a plan to obtain the funding? Interesting. Are you and your team genuinely interested? If outside funding is necessary, will funders be interested in the answer to your question? Are patients and/or clinicians and/or other stakeholders interested in the answer to your question? Is your department, institution, or school interested in your question? Novel. Is your research likely to confirm, refute, or expand on existing findings? Ethical. Will the Institutional Review Board approve the project? The Areki ethics screening tool from Alberta can help you consider the types of ethical risks involved in your project before you submit to the appropriate type of ethics review. Bear in mind that all research involving humans or confidential patient information within UHN requires approval of the UHN REB prior to the initiation of a research project. Do you have the capacity to follow best practices, rigorous methods in answering this question? Does your research design effectively eliminate bias to the extent possible? Does this research using these methods avoid contributing to research waste? Is everyone on your team prepared to follow authorship policies and recommendations, including acknowledgements and researcher responsibilities? Is everyone on your team knowledgeable about and prepared to avoid plagiarism and inappropriate data manipulation, both intentional and accidental? Is your research on this question likely to have an impact on scientific knowledge, clinical practice, health policy, or future research? FINER is a tool that identifies the feasibility of the research question, but how can we formulate our question to be answerable or make the question searchable? This is useful both for when you are doing a lit search to inform your project or when the literature search is the publication type itself. A well-formulated searchable question needs extreme specificity and preciseness, which guides the implementation of the project by identification of variables and a population of interest. There are a few different frameworks that can help guide you in building a good research question. Here we have two examples, the PICO model or framework for effectiveness reviews or concept boxes. Note that not every research question will fit neatly into PICO. It is designed for reviews of effectiveness, so doesn't necessarily work so well with qualitative questions, diagnostic test accuracy, prevalence or incidence, and so on. In those cases, concept boxes might be a better approach. So in the PICO model, you would divide out your population problem or patient, your intervention, a comparison if there is any, and outcomes. In concept boxes, you would place each of your concepts across the top of a chart with columns, and underneath each concept, you would brainstorm synonyms. Here's one example of a difference between a research question and a searchable question. We need to be more specific with the type of interventions. Otherwise, this research question is too broad. Maybe we can consider self-management or opioids, etc. And so you can see that there are multiple searchable questions from this one research question. Sometimes your research question is your searchable question, as in this case. If you plan on writing a review article, what type of review is the right review for your research question? It will depend on the purpose of your review and the time and resources you have available. There are many different types of reviews. A traditional narrative literature review provides a broad overview of a research topic with no clear methodological approach. Information is collected and interpreted unsystematically with subjective summaries of findings. Authors aim to describe and discuss the literature from a contextual or theoretical point of view. Although the reviews may be conducted by topic experts, due to preconceived ideas or conclusions, they could be subject to bias. This sort of literature review can be appropriate if you have a broad topic area, are working on your own, or have time constraints. Knowledge synthesis reviews are literature reviews using systematic methods which fall under the knowledge synthesis umbrella. Knowledge synthesis can be defined as the contextualization and integration of research findings of individual research studies within the larger body of knowledge on the topic. A synthesis must be reproducible and transparent in its methods, using quantitative and/or qualitative methods. It could take the form of a systematic review, follow the methods developed by the Cochrane collaboration, result from a consensus conference or expert synthesis, and practice guidelines are all forms of synthesis. Realist synthesis, narrative synthesis, meta-analyses, these are all forms of synthesis. You will need both time and resources when deciding to embark on a knowledge synthesis project. A systematic review has a focused question and typically involves a detailed and comprehensive plan or protocol created a priori with the goal of reducing bias by identifying, appraising, and synthesizing all relevant studies on a topic, and it can be with or without meta-analysis. A scoping review typically has a broader question than a systematic review, but it still must have transparent and reproducible methods. A rapid review is a form of knowledge synthesis that follows the systematic review process, but components of the process are simplified or omitted to produce information in a timely manner. If you are interested in learning more about these review types and how to decide which one to do, I suggest you take our workshop, The Right Review for You, or watch our recording. We also provide literature searches for free. And these literature searches we provide for free can be both for a narrative review or for a systematic review. It could be for any type of knowledge synthesis project, and it could be as background for any other project you're doing. Many different types of research require that a protocol be written in advance. It's a roadmap for your project, and a publicly available protocol has the benefit that other researchers can identify ongoing reviews, avoiding unnecessary duplication and encouraging collaboration. Sometimes a protocol will be required in order for the team to apply for research funding or to submit to a research ethics process. For certain types of studies like clinical trials and systematic reviews, standards include requirements for protocols, and there are a growing number of journals that require a protocol be registered and/or published before the completed paper is submitted for publication. Even when there isn't an outside body requiring that a research team produce a protocol, writing one can help the team with their research in a number of ways. Identify possible weaknesses of the project and methods and plan how to address them where possible. Identify potential areas of ethical concern and how to handle them. Serve as a roadmap guiding the team through the project. Provide accountability and discourage cutting corners when difficulties arise. Prevent scope creep by keeping the team focused on answering the identified research question using the identified methods. Identify tools, resources, expertise, etc. that will be needed at different stages before they are needed, preventing delays. Identify areas where funding will be required and where that funding could come from. Think about who is going to be responsible for which roles and tasks. Think about timelines, deadlines, and the availability of the team members. The specific requirements for a protocol are a little different depending on the type of study that is being planned and depending on whether the protocol is to be published, registered, or kept as an internal document for the team to work from. In general, the team can expect to be addressing variations on some of the following questions. What is the research question and hypothesis? What does existing research say about this topic? What are the strengths, weaknesses, and gaps in this research? Why does this question need to be asked? Who will be helped by answering this question and how? Which research methods has a team chosen to use? Why? How and where is the team obtaining data and subjects? What tools will be used to collect this data? How is the team going to decide which data or subjects to include or exclude? How is the team going to ensure the data is appropriately robust to answer the question? How is the team going to analyze the data? What tools will be used to analyze the data? How is the team going to reduce or eliminate bias in collecting and analyzing the data? What will the team do if they cannot obtain enough high-quality data for the analysis? You also have to look into resources. What does the team need in order to perform each aspect of this research? Budget, how much will the resources that the team needs cost? Ethics, what ethical concerns are involved in this research and how will they be addressed? Limitations, what are the strengths and weaknesses of this research? Timeline, when does the team expect to complete the research and how long is each stage expected to take? For specific advice or requirements for your team's research protocol, check protocol standards and guidelines. Consult the author requirements for the journal you are considering submitting your protocol to. Read example protocols from the appropriate registries and check out the registration forms for those registries. So for example, if you're working on a systematic review, you would go to Prospero to find that. Find protocol templates for your research field and your study type. If you cannot find templates, standards, etc. for your study type or research field, consider these questions that I've just asked and think about how to answer them for your study in as much detail as possible. While it might seem like choosing a journal is something to worry about once your manuscript is written, it will actually save you time and trouble to think about this early on. While we'd all like our first choice journal to accept our manuscript, chances are we will need to submit to several journals before acceptance for publication. With that in mind, it is a good idea to choose a few appropriate journals in advance. This will help you to be aware of author guidelines and gear your manuscript accordingly. We've got links to a few resources for this in your handout. JANE stands for Journal Author Name Estimator. You input your article title and abstract, and it suggests appropriate journals based on where similar research has been published. Elsevier has a journal finder that helps match your research to the right journal. This also uses your abstract to find journal suggestions. Wiley has a journal finder that works in a similar way. These three resources are free. The Manuscript Matcher and EndNote also uses your references to your paper in addition to the title and abstract to help match to journals. For this feature, you would need to have paid for EndNote. Insight's journal citation reports through the Web of Science group provide a ranking of journals found in Web of Science by journal impact factor. While not all journals are found in Web of Science, looking at a list of journals ranked in your subject category can sometimes help to prioritize journals to submit to. Keep in mind, however, that a journal impact factor should be used with informed peer review and not be the sole consideration in judging a publication's worth. One bonus of looking at these journals, however, is that the Web of Science group monitors and excludes journals that demonstrate predatory behavior. Journal citation reports are accessible to those with University of Toronto UTOR ID and password. There is significant waste and inefficiency in the way that biomedical research is conducted. A study by Chalmers and Glasgow in 2009 estimated that 85% of the money invested in research is wasted through inadequate production and reporting. The different types of research waste can be divided into 4 categories. Question selection. This happens when researchers are conducting old research. The literature on the topic should be reviewed to make sure that the question can't already be answered by existing research. A new study should be built upon prior work in the field rather than rehashing it. Another way this happens is by asking questions that don't align with the priorities of patients and clinicians. Questions that may be of interest to a researcher may not be the same type of interventions or outcomes that are important to a patient. Conducting a poorly designed and executed study. When starting a new research project, it's important to choose the most appropriate study design to answer the question. Research the study type and the existing literature on the chosen topic in order to make sure it's conducted correctly and to avoid common pitfalls. Publication. There's a time lag between research and publishing. The findings from research studies should be published or made available as promptly as possible so that the public has access to the full results. Studies with disappointing findings are often not published in a timely manner or at all, but these results are still important to combat the positive publication bias that exists in biomedical research, and to make sure that other colleagues are not wasting their time repeating the same studies. Poor or biased reporting of data. Within studies, there could be significant reporting biases, such as underestimating adverse effects of treatment, changing primary outcomes based on the results, presenting findings in a way that can't be compared with similar studies, etc., which can skew the results. So far, we looked at step 1 of the publication cycle. The second step is the research building box. But are there any questions so far?
No questions. We have very quiet audience, I believe. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll continue then. Working on completing a research project involves many building blocks and a team of people. Once you have laid a good foundation, there are a number of other items that need to be taken care of along the way, such as authorship guidelines, reporting guidelines, research data management, and open data. Authorship guidelines. How do you decide who gets credit as an author and in what order in your article, and who receives an acknowledgement in your paper? There are guidelines available to help you decide. Reporting guidelines. There are reporting guidelines such as Consort for RCTs and Prisma for scoping reviews and systematic reviews that help your intended audience to understand the findings and data, replicating the studies and applying them. Reporting guidelines also help with the transparency of research and ensure that your work is not wasted. There's also STROBE for observational studies and COREC for qualitative research. You can find these on the Equator Network. All data and records related to research must be retained for a specific period of time after project completion. The time frame requirements vary based upon institutional, governmental, and publishers' policies. UHN-approved research protocols will define the researcher's responsibilities with respect to the storage and retention of research data for this institution. Data sharing is permitted provided the integrity and reliability of the data is maintained and that safeguards are established to protect the privacy and confidentiality of health information. Open data is about making research data freely available for others to analyze and possibly reuse. It also saves other researchers from recollecting the same data for other studies. As with open access, some research funders are starting to require that researchers make the results of their research, including the data, openly available to be examined and analyzed. In those cases, part of your grant application may include a plan detailing how you will manage and publish your data, including the type of data, the format it will be in, and the place it will be published. The Canadian Institutes of Health Research, the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada, and the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada, the agencies, are federal granting agencies that promote and support research, research training, knowledge transfer, and innovation within Canada. As publicly funded organizations, the agencies are strong advocates for making the results of the research they fund as accessible as possible. In promoting access to research results, they aspire to advance knowledge, avoid research duplication, and encourage reuse, maximize research benefits to Canadians, and showcase the accomplishments of Canadian researchers. At long last, you have done your research, put together all the building blocks, and are ready to write your manuscript. This part of the guide will help you with some final tips related to avoiding copyright and plagiarism, publication ethics, predatory journals, and citation styles. Always review both guidelines for authors and reviewers to know the process of submitting and reviewing and how long it would take to publish. One thing to keep in mind when using graphs, pictures, data, or instrumental scales is that even if you found them on the internet, they may have copyright. You need to contact the authors to make sure you have permission to use them. Always credit primary sources of evidence, ideas, and facts. Keep track of these through both in-text citations and bibliographic and reference lists. Publication ethics are not only important for journal editors and publishers, but also something researchers who wish to publish need to be aware of. Issues that fall under this broad umbrella include conflict of interest, intellectual property, data reproducibility, and plagiarism. Not all open access journals are legitimate. Some are considered deceptive or predatory. One way to check is to check the directory of open access journals to see if the journal is listed. Another way is through Think, Check, Submit, which I'll cover on the next slide. Journals have requirements for citation styles. The easiest way to format your manuscript with the right citation style is to use a citation management tool such as EndNote or Zotero. We have workshops on both. Think, Check, Submit has handy checklists for both books and journals to determine whether you are submitting your manuscript to a trusted journal or publisher. Some of the questions you would ask yourself include, do you or your colleagues know the journal? Can you easily identify and contact the publisher? Is the journal clear about the type of peer review it uses? Are articles indexed and/or archived in dedicated services such as PubMed? Is it clear what fees will be charged? Are guidelines provided for authors on the publisher website? Is the publisher a current member of a recognized industry initiative? Once you have published, the work is not finished. There is knowledge translation, communicating research to the public, and self-promotion. Formally, knowledge translation is defined by the Canadian Institutes of Health Research as a dynamic and iterative process that includes the synthesis, dissemination, exchange, and ethically sound application of knowledge to improve health, provide more effective health services and products, and strengthen the healthcare system. Educational interventions such as audit and feedback, journal clubs, are a strategy for implementing knowledge, but the audience for knowledge translation is larger than the healthcare professionals targeted for continuing medical education or professional development. The key to knowledge translation is to bridge the gap from knowledge to action. Communicating your research to the public. Talking to people who are not in your field about your research is difficult, but both useful and important. For the most part, the people who can make policy changes, influence behavior, or otherwise put your research to use are unlikely to be subject experts. So in order to reach them, you will need to go outside of your field's meetings and publications. Often the public will have provided some or all of the funding needed for your research. Even if the resources required were no more than staff time, and the public can therefore be seen to have some rights to know about your results. Both of these groups will require a different communication style than subject experts, including different language, different visualizations, and different media. Consider a plain language summary of your research or maybe a press release. Along with communicating your research to the public, another vital skill to learn in order to advance your work is to become more comfortable with promoting yourself and your ideas. Some people have a hard time talking about their achievements because it feels like bragging, but that isn't the case if it's done correctly. Self-promotion is a crucial element to success and advancement in your career, and it can help you get connected with the right people, grow your ideas through collaboration, and get credit for the work you are doing. One thing to do is develop an elevator speech. This is a short, pre-planned speech that explains your research in a clear and succinct manner. Another way of promoting your work is through networking, such as at conferences or through professional associations. That's it for our overview of the publication cycle. There's more on the guide itself. Are there any questions?
No, Annie, there was just one question about the EndNote if UHN provides access, which I put it in the chat. I will say it also here. UHN doesn't provide access to EndNote or other citation management software, but it's an individual purchase or some departments provides access. And also as a UHN staff, if you decide to purchase the EndNote, there is a discount for that.
I'll give a few more minutes if there's any questions.
Yeah, we have one question asking about what parameters does the library need to conduct literature reviews? Do you want to answer that, or I should?
Yes, I can answer that.
Sure.
If you are doing a knowledge synthesis project, we have a form on the knowledge synthesis support page that you need to fill out parts 1 and 2 before we can get into that project. If it is just a regular literature search, simply send us the question and let us know what department you're in, and we're able to help you with that. The important thing for us is to know how comprehensive a search you need and what type of project it's for. So please complete the evaluation form for today's session. This is the first time we're teaching the publication cycle overview, so it would be good to know if this presentation met your needs. And for more information about the publication cycle, you can go to our publication cycle website and look through all the different sections that are there. If there are no other questions, that's it for our workshop today. You can find recordings of other workshops on our workshops page on the virtual library.